What's going on, Bucs fans? Welcome to our Miller Lite Kickoff show. We are live not only on the Buccaneers platforms, but in Raymond James Stadium at the draft party. Team reporter Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and we are going to be going for about 45 minutes, taking you all the way up to the start of the draft. Tons of interviews and amazing content for you. And we want to make sure we start off by reminding you to check out the Buccaneers app. It's got all of your coverage of everything going on with the draft, everything you might need to know for tonight, and you can also play Coke Bingo on it, so make sure you're paying attention throughout the night to mark off your squares. So, you know what, let's start off with a little bit of a recap, because we can't talk about what we think might happen in the draft without taking a look back at what all has happened this offseason. So let's start on the offensive side of things, and there's a certain guy that I feel like maybe we're going to start with here. Is that fair?
That's fair, Casey. Basically, the biggest development of the offseason on offense was two developments that became no development, because Tom Brady never really used the word retirement, but said he'd be stepping away from the game. And then 40 days later, he announced that he would be playing for the Buccaneers in 2022. And between those two times, the Buccaneers started exploring other options. And Jason Licht said no stone would be left unturned to figure out who the quarterback would be for this team in 2022, because they intended to still try to compete for the Super Bowl. So that could have been trading for a veteran. That could have been getting into this draft market. That could have been seeing if Kyle Trask is your guy or Blaine Gabbert. But it's all a moot point because Tom Brady is back, and that means the Buccaneers are very much where they were a year ago and very much a Super Bowl favorite.
And a group of guys that are very important to him, the offensive line. There were a lot of question marks going into the offseason in terms of free agency and things like that. And there were some other developments we also didn't see coming on the offensive line. So what all has happened there so far this year?
Yeah, well, Ali Marpet retired and stuck with it, and he apparently is sticking with it, which is great for him, but it obviously creates a hole on the offensive line, which the Buccaneers filled by a pretty dramatic and impressive trade for a very good guard from the Patriots named Shaq Mason. Also, Alex Kappa, who got to use free agency and got a nice deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. Good for him, but that opens another spot. But the Buccaneers re-signed Aaron Stinney. I think they like him. I think they like some of the depth with Robert Hainsey and Nick Leverett. So that's an area that a lot of people think the Buccaneers might address in the draft. The question is, how do the Bucs feel about it? Do they think they've hit those two openings well enough?
And the franchise tag, always an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Every year the Buccaneers did use it, and it ended up being pretty helpful to keep a certain person around. So tell us what the Bucs did with the franchise tag.
The very best thing that can happen with the franchise tag is that you extend your negotiating period and then you sign that guy to a long-term deal. And that's two in a row for the Buccaneers, because they were able to re-sign Shaq Barrett after he spent a year on the tag. And then with Chris Godwin, it wasn't even a season. The Bucs and Chris Godwin were able to reach an agreement on a multi-year extension, which is awesome for the Buccaneers for at least the next 2 years. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Boy, what a wide receiver that would be.
That would be, right? That would have everything. We have at least those two together for at least 2 more years and hopefully beyond that.
Okay, and then, we've talked so much about some of the player changes that happened, but how about the coaching changes? And particularly, we are in the middle of talking about the offense. So let's look at what happened in the coaching area and how that might pertain to the offense.
Well, obviously, I'm sure everybody here knows that Bruce Arians chose to step aside into a consulting role, and he helped engineer what he really wanted to do. One of his main career goals was this succession plan to help a guy, and in this case, a minority, get a chance that he deserved, and that's Todd Bowles. Everybody at One Buc Place loves it because we all love Todd Bowles, and we think he's going to be a great head coach. And I don't think it's going to affect the offense a ton, because Byron Leftwich is still calling plays. Bruce Arians is still in the building as a consultant. Todd Bowles will put his stamp on this, to be sure, but the Buccaneers still have most of the same players on offense and the same guy calling plays.
And then now quickly, we'll talk about running backs and tight ends kind of here together, and in particular, what this might mean for the draft tonight in terms of what hasn't happened so far this offseason.
Leonard Fournette re-signed, and this time he got a multi-year deal after settling for one-year deals a couple times in a row. And that's big because, as Jason Licht says, he is a 3-down back, and that makes it hard for other teams to defend. And so that was a big re-signing for the Buccaneers. Rob Gronkowski, on the other hand, as of this point, has not decided yet whether he's coming back. I am of the opinion that Tom Brady will probably talk him into it at some point, but as you head into this draft, you have a very slim depth chart at tight end, a little slimmer than what you have at running back, so that could be a priority position for the Buccaneers in day 2.
Well, we've been taking a look back at the offseason. Let's also take a look back at some of the incredible highlights from last season.
It's getting harder and harder to see what's true, but it's never been easier when I'm with you. Yeah, it's harder and harder and harder to doubt these days. But when I see the smile across your face and the sunrise lights up another day, I woke up and my whole world changed. You're the kind of love that gives me faith, and I believe.
Well, we are back here live at the draft party for our Miller Lite kickoff show, and we were recapping the offense in the first segment and what happened this offseason. Now we wanted to talk about the defense, although ironically to do that, we're going to start again with Tom Brady, because that's what happens. The Tom Brady effect is both sides of the ball. So tell me what his return in your mind did for the defense.
Which means that this isn't actually ironic, Casey, because like you said, Tom Brady kind of affects all aspects of your team. And Tom Brady announced his intention to return for 2022 right before the start of free agency. I don't think that was an accident, and I think it helped greatly with the Buccaneers' efforts to bring back a lot of their guys, including Carlton Davis, who essentially alluded to that in his press conference. I'm not 100% sure Carlton or any of the other guys would be back if Tom Brady hadn't come back for one more year. So that was the first big development for the Bucs defense, even though it was on offense.
And now, how about the safety position? This is one that I don't think always gets as much attention, but there definitely were some key developments this offseason for the Bucs there.
Well, one of the guys that left and got a good deal, and good for him, we love the guy, Jordan Whitehead, got a great deal with the Jets. Great player for the Buccaneers, especially around the line of scrimmage in the box. He'll probably be great for the Jets, but the Buccaneers had to move on, and they actually signed 2 safeties. Logan Ryan, a guy who's a pretty versatile guy who could maybe play in the slot as a cornerback as well. And Keanu Neal, a player the Buccaneers know very well from the NFC South and his years in Atlanta. Spent last year as a linebacker in Dallas, but he's coming back to safety, and he does a lot of the things well that Jordan Whitehead did well, an enforcer up around the box, around the line of scrimmage. So the Buccaneers actually have a lot of options, a lot of ways that Todd Bowles can arrange that secondary.
And speaking of Todd Bowles, what do you think the coaching changes are going to mean to the defensive side of the ball with him being the one that's taking over?
Well, what they did was they made Larry Foote and Casey Rogers sort of co-offensive coordinators, Casey doing the run game and Larry doing the pass game. But I think Todd Bowles will still have his fingerprint over all of that. And, you know, what we've seen from Todd Bowles' defense over the last 3 years makes you very confident. I mean, look at this graphic up on the board. All the ways in the last 3 years under Todd Bowles that the Buccaneers have ranked high in the top 3 in most of those categories, especially takeaways and sacks. Great run defense, great in the red zone, great on third down. Todd Bowles is still here. All those other coaches are still here. I think you should expect to see more of the same.
And then finally, this time last year, we were about to be getting Joe Tryon-Shoyinka on this night. So tell us about the outside linebacker group and what did and didn't happen so far this offseason.
Right, there's no re-signing of Jason Pierre-Paul, at least at this point, so that's probably about 700 snaps on defense that the Buccaneers will need to replace. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is probably going to step up into a starting role. He had 4 sacks as a rookie and had some great moments. We'll see if he can provide a lot more opposite Shaq Barrett. And Anthony Nelson came on very strong at the end of last year, too. I still think it's a position, however, that the Buccaneers could use a little more at.
All right, well, we have several interviews that we have to show you this evening. We're going to start right now with Jamel Dean. I talked to him about any advice he would have for draft picks and, of course, a guy that is very close with now head coach Todd Bowles and what he thought of that new hire. So I would love to hear what your thoughts were when you found out that Todd Bowles was going to be the head coach, because I get the feeling you have a bit of a special relationship with him.
It was kind of funny for me because I was joking about, because all last he kept telling me, nah, I only got about a few more years left in me. I'm like, Coach, you have to wait till I retire, so till you retire. He's like, I don't know about that. Then once he got the head coaching job, I was like, yes. Now I got you for a couple more years.
Yes, that's amazing. And tell me about what he's meant to you in your career so far and the way you guys relate to each other.
You know, he's like that extra father figure for me. So, like, you know, ever since my rookie year, I've been going up to his office and just having him teach me the game. And he always preached about, like, it's the mental aspect of the game that separates you from others. So then I was just like, I just want to know. Because it seemed like I hear him on the field telling me, like, what's coming. And I just like, how does he know it? And then it really surprised me when what he said actually happened. So now I was like, I want to be able to, like, be smart just like him.
And I get the feeling also maybe you're subject of his trash talking a fair amount. Is that accurate?
Oh, most definitely.
Why do you think you are one of his more common targets?
I don't know. I think it's something about because a lot of people like throw their shots at me. Maybe because they feel like I don't take it personal. And then I'll probably have my slick comments back too. But it's just always just like that relationship me and Bowles had. That he just so happy to see me walk by and he just can't help himself.
He's got to say something.
Yeah, he just have to say something. It depends on what it is. I'll say something back.
What do you think he would say about you? If I asked him, just tell me about Jamel, what do you think he'd say?
He'd be like, Dean, I don't know where you guys even waste your time with him.
That was even a pretty good impersonation. That sounded pretty good. I know that you are someone who, you like to set goals for yourself, and I think you even have a whiteboard maybe that you had some goals on last year.
Right.
Did you reset them for this year, or are they continuing on?
I'm going to reset it because it's a new year, and I'm taking like a new approach into this year, knowing that it's my last year, my contract, and then I feel like, you know, I won't know if I get a second contract or not, so I'm trying to do the best I can to try to earn a second.
And I know you've got the physical part down, that's for sure, because as we were walking in here, our strength and conditioning coach, Anthony Peroli, was saying that I had to talk to you about the fact that earlier you were on resistance bands and you still were running 21 miles an hour. Is that right?
Yeah, that's kind of accurate.
That's kind of accurate, yeah. So, and then of course I asked, are you the fastest guy on the team? And the answer?
Yeah, I'm always claiming I'm the fastest on the team until proven otherwise.
You've talked about how much you've grown in the mental aspect of the game. With what happened last year, with all the adversity that the defense and particularly the secondary faced with so many injuries, and you were one of the healthiest guys of that group, what did that teach you about the mental aspect of the game, or what was that like for you to go through a unit so decimated by injuries and you end up having to be one of the most relied on guys as so many other guys that you're used to playing with went down? So,
you know, I used that as my opportunity to step up, and then knowing that I got the role of being that guy until everybody became healthy again. So they made me like change my ways, and then also having Richard Sherman here too. That was my idol growing up. So that to have him in my corner with me, like to talk me through and to give me like vet advice and stuff. So, you know, I took that into consideration too. So I just want to play good for the organization and also him too, just to get his approval.
And you've also known Carlton longer than everybody here. You go all the way back to the Auburn days. So
really high school.
Even high school, yeah, that's so true. So getting to see all these iterations of his career and all the different steps he's taken and where he's gone, you might be the best person to ask about what you've seen from his skill set, his past, present, and future potential even. What has it been like to watch Carlton go through all that and where you place him on the league-wide list of cornerbacks?
You know, he's most definitely top 5 corner in my eyes. And just to see his progression all from high school to Auburn to now, you know, it's an exciting feeling. I was happy for him. I told him, like, bud, you know, you just motivated me. I'm happy for you. You really did. Like, just knowing you personally and seeing that you reached this second contract, like, it's only inspired me to get there too. I
know that of the guys that you play with on defense, a huge percentage of them are guys that you got drafted alongside. Why do you think your class has had such a big impact and there's still so many of you around? What did that mean to you guys to have all come in together, and what do you think had led to all that success?
You know, it made our bond stronger. So as years went on, we just grew closer to each other. We got understanding of one another, and then we all set the same goals. So it was just basically holding each other accountable, like, hey, look, even though one of us having a bad day, come on, we gotta pick it up, man. It's just one of them days for you, but you know, you get past it.
So then now, what advice do you think you would give to new rookies coming in?
You know, man, just come out and give your first best impression, and then don't be scared to go up to the coach's office if you have any questions, because, you know, it's not easy. This is a hard game to play and a hard game to learn. So you're not gonna know everything. So just go out there and show the coach that you're really interested in learning.
Well, we have recapped the offseason, and I think now, considering what day it is, maybe we should get into the draft just a little bit here. So let's start into just the overall strategy you think that the team is going to have, especially after everything we've talked about what the team has already done this offseason. What is tonight going to be about?
Casey, you remember a year ago, the big story was that the Buccaneers somehow, against all odds, were able to re-sign just about everybody and bring all 22 starters plus almost every regular back from the Super Bowl champions. And so they went into last year's draft truly probably the most in team history, being able to focus on best player available. Now, it's not quite the same this year, but it's close. With some of the departures and some of the additions, Russell Gage, the safeties we were talking about, the Shaq Mason, I think that Jason Licht and company have done a good job of shoring up the depth chart to the point that they're not beholden to one or two positions. So at pick 27, if you were really beholden to one position and your guy went, now you're in a little bit of trouble. At this point, the Buccaneers can get there at 27 and look at a lot of different positions. As Jason Licht said last week, all options are on the table.
And so now looking at, we know tonight everybody loves the round one. That's what everybody gets really excited to talk about. But this team has shown how important the middle rounds can be. So what do you think are going to be the important things in those middle rounds? How is that going to play into the overall strategy with this team?
Obviously, the first-round pick is the focus every year, but this team would not have gotten to the Super Bowl if Jason Licht and company had not hit on a lot of mid-round picks, second, third, and fourth-round picks, and I think we have a graphic for that. In recent years, some of the key players that the Buccaneers have hit in those middle rounds have formed the core of this team. Now, you look at this year's draft, not only Jason Licht, but GMs around the league have been saying they don't necessarily have 20, 25 players in this draft that they have first-round grades on. However, they think there's a lot of depth in that they can get good players that can help right away in the middle rounds. And so, theoretically, that would say to me, if you could trade back a little bit, add some more assets in the middle rounds, the Buccaneers currently don't have a 5th and 6th round pick. That would be something that the Bucs would like to do, but so would a lot of teams.
So you talked about there is a potential for trading down, and so we know that the mock drafts don't always take trading into consideration, but looking at the mock draft so far, has there been any semblance of consensus, or what do you think is the most likely thing based on just the mock drafts that you've seen that the Bucs do?
Well, at the beginning, after the retirement of Ali Marpet and the departure of Alex Kappa, most mock drafts were giving the Buccaneers a guard, like Zion Johnson, and you see that up there. Some are still doing that, and I think that's the difference between how maybe the nationwide view of the Bucs offensive line depth doesn't necessarily be the same as the way the Bucs are interiorly. If there's a player that the Buccaneers actually like at guard, I could see that happening. But I think some of these others up here, like Devontae Wyatt, Logan Hall, maybe take a flyer on David Ojabo, who tore his Achilles at his pro day and wouldn't be ready for a good portion of the season. I think that's probably more likely tonight.
And so D-line, it looks like, is definitely one of the more
sure.
likely things. Do you feel like if that was you were a betting man, that might be one of the good options there?
Well, again, Jason Licht is going to try to find where his boards intersect. He has them set up by best player, and he has them set up by need. And the best pick, the best outcome will be if you can intersect those two lists at the top. And I think that he thinks that can happen, and that may be at defensive line because, as he said, there's a lot of ways to add players, but the Buccaneers do need to pick up some snaps. If there are no more free agency additions, you can see up here, Ndamukong Suh accounted for 797 snaps. Steve McClendon for almost 300. That's like 1,100 snaps on defensive line you have to replace. Some of these guys can step up and play a little bit more, but I could definitely see the Buccaneers adding somebody at that position.
And finally, quickly, you were always beating the drum for defensive backs. Is that something you think could end up happening?
Casey, you could pick a cornerback in the second half of every draft, and I would be happy. You can't ever get or keep enough depth at that position. And when you look at the fact that Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean and even Mike Edwards, who's a safety but also plays in the slot, are all potential free agents next year, all could depart, it's time possibly to start planning for the future and stocking up that position from the bottom.
Well, we are going to send Scott back to the Advent Health Training Center now because he is going to catch up with General Manager Jason Licht, and we will actually have that interview for you here during this show before the draft actually starts. So we're going to let him head on off to that. So for now, we're going to show you an interview I did with John Spytek, Director of Player Personnel. He has been a busy man this season, gave us some great insight on how the team is going to approach the draft.
So I think a lot of people would say that they either would love to be a scout, wish they had known what it took to become a scout. I didn't know this was even a thing I could have been someday, that your job is one of those that a lot of people that watch football on a Sunday are like, man, that would be so awesome. So tell everyone out there wondering, how did you get to this role?
Yeah, I'd like to joke with my wife, for instance, that I played in college and the first person I ever evaluated was myself, and I wasn't good enough. You know, I went to Michigan and there was a lot of really good players back then, and I was kind of like, I don't move like that, I can't run like that, I can't jump like that, I'm not that strong. The idea of becoming a scout was kind of based, I mean, innocently on that enough, but I knew I didn't want to be a coach, and I just kind of saw the game more from a movement, one-on-one. You know, this guy, if I'm watching film, you know, that was a joke too, like they're in 21 personnel, the fullbacks, and you know, old school football, the fullbacks in the home position, you know, they line up like this, what are you thinking? And I was like, oh, that fullback's really good, he's gonna smash me. And so I knew I wasn't kind of a coach, I didn't see the game that way, but I really kind of felt like I had this instinct, this sense to see movement in people and effort and intelligence as a player. And you know, again, when I signed up to be a scout, I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I knew I didn't want to be a coach, and I knew I didn't want to leave a game of football.
And I would love to know how you evaluate a scout, because, you know, a player can bust, and it might be easy to say, oh, that scout was wrong about him. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily true. No one can fully predict what someone is going to be like, and you can have done every bit of work that you tried to and not know what's going to happen to someone when they get into the NFL. And so how do you look at that and decide what was a scout's fault, what wasn't a scout's fault, and to tell if someone is really good at their job as a scout results-wise?
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple parts. I mean, you have to be a good evaluator, one. I mean, you have to be able, like our college guys, our pro guys can look at pro tape all day and they can see what's playing in Atlanta or New Orleans or in Green Bay and say like, oh, this guy's kind of like that. You know, when you're doing college, you're projecting 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids into the NFL and hoping that maybe they can continue to learn and grow, and there's a development to them, and sometimes there is, you know, and sometimes there isn't. So you have to be able to evaluate. I mean, that's our job, is to evaluate players, because the rest of it almost doesn't matter if they're not good enough. But it is hugely important for us to bring the right kind of people into this organization. And I think that's really where we've hit our stride here lately, is an understanding of what a Buccaneer looks like, what we want a Buccaneer to be. You know, and it's Jason's job, it's my job, it's Mike Beal's job from a draft standpoint to communicate to our scouts. These are the things that we want our guys to have or be able to develop. And then it's their task with going out, and they do a fantastic job of finding the right kind of people, going to the schools and asking the right kind of questions, you know, so we can get to the point where we are comfortable with these guys and we have a belief in them that they'll have every opportunity to succeed. Now, the hit rate is 50% in the draft. I mean, I think we're above that lately, and we're trying to stay there. So we would never just use one player as an example, like you missed on this guy, as you know, a litmus test for you're not doing a good job. But there is an expectation that you are right more often than you're wrong on the players, especially when we've all been together long enough now that there's not a lot of learning anymore as to what a Buccaneer needs to be. We do know what a Buccaneer is.
Right, and I mean, to talk about the hit rate, I think about the draft class that has Devin and Sean and Mike Edwards and Jamel Dean and all these, Anthony Nelson, Scotty Miller, all these guys that in particular played such big roles in the Super Bowl run. To have so many from one draft class, do you feel like there was something you guys were able to learn from that year to say, hey, let's try to have that be every year? What worked so well for that particular class that so many of them would still be contributing at a high level here?
You know, I don't know if we learned any one thing from that other than there was some confidence that was built in this. You know, I mean, those guys all won a Super Bowl in their second year in the NFL, which, as most of them in starter level roles, but all of them making big plays throughout that season. You know, and so certainly there's some things that we can take here and there that we like this, we did this, we were right on this. You know, but I think it's just you kind of take a moment and breathe and study our own roster, and you're all right, we're doing this the right way. I mean, we just accomplished the ultimate goal with a bunch of guys that are starters in their rookie contracts.
It feels like for everyone following the draft, when they're watching all the talking heads and the way everybody talks about the draft, they use the phrases of best player available, position of need as kind of the contrasting things. And of course, you'd love for it to be both of those things. But then I think there's also the third category of, are you in the win now, of who could maybe help you now? So looking at those three sort of themes to a pick, how would you say you guys tend to evaluate those things? What value do you place on each of those? Is it different year to year? And maybe how does this year factor in with those themes?
I think it certainly could be different year to year. I mean, when you have a roster like we have right now, it's increasingly more difficult for a rookie to come in and have the kind of impact that Devin did when he was a rookie, that Tristan did when he was a rookie. You know, the expectation is we want to draft starters, eventual starters. You know, some of them are good enough to play right away, and some of them takes a few years, but we're not trying to draft backups. And then in terms of best available versus position of need, I think we approach it from a standpoint as who's the best player for the Buccaneers right now. Based on our roster and the way it's built currently, we are in charge of making sure that we're set up, this organization is set up for years to come to be in a place to win Super Bowls and compete for Super Bowls. And so, you know, sometimes it's going to be drafting Joe Tryon in the first last year, even though we have 2 Pro Bowl players at that position. Sometimes it's going to be drafting Tristan, and he starts every game as a rookie. You know, when we set the draft for, when I get together with Jason and Coach Bowles and Mike Beal, you know, we're going to try to pick the best player available for the Buccaneers franchise. And it may be now, and it may be next year. But, you know, our goal is to make the pick to be the best Buck.
How well does this draft fit what you just talked about the strategy for this year?
Yeah, I think it's a great draft from that standpoint. There's a lot of depth. I mean, I think one of the things that you'll see with COVID is a lot of those kids that were been forced to come out last year were given an extra year. So it has created a depth to this class that maybe wouldn't have been there without COVID. So in terms of what that looks like, I think there's a lot of value in the mid rounds. You know, we're not going to be able to touch the premier talent picking at 27 that we have been able to in the past, but we are confident that, you know, we've got 6 picks right now that we can find some really good players that will help this franchise going forward. And, you know, I mean, I think with where our roster's at, we could pick anything. You know, I mean, maybe they can compete to start, maybe they have a rotational role, or maybe they're a guy that will have a chance to start next year. But again, you never know in our game when 2 injuries and all of a sudden the guy that was the 4th receiver is the starting receiver. So, like I said before, we're going to pick the best Buck, and I'm confident in our process and our ability to do that.
Well, this time last year, the Bucs were about to pick outside linebacker Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So I sat down with him this last week to reminisce on the last year, what he's learned and what he's looking forward to most this season. Check it out.
So how do you already feel different this time of year compared to last year when, one, I mean, you were coming off not having played football for a whole year. So that's already a transition in and of itself. Then transitioning from college to pro. What are the ways that you've already seen, oh my gosh, I feel like a totally different person now than last year?
Just having a routine, you know, coming into the draft, you're just like, all right, I'm on a team, I'm in Tampa, I'm in Florida, all right, now I gotta get a crib, I gotta get a house, all that, you know, just the little things that come with, you know, moving across the country. But now I know, like, been in the city for a whole year, I feel like I'm comfortable with the team, teammates, coaches, all that, so it's like a whole different mindset, just leading into the season. Like, you're not just trying to figure out the little things, so, you know, just hit the ground running. Like I said previously, it's really excited.
Now it's time for new draft picks to come in, which I'm sure you're going to be excited to not be a rookie anymore. I know that everybody always wants to shed that title pretty quickly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I say so.
Yeah, so now there's going to be new rookies coming in. What is your advice to them now, or maybe even things you wish you had known a year ago?
Man, there's really no, like, set in stone piece of advice that you can give them, but in order to come in, you know, looking to, you know, compete, you know, just compete in everything you do.
Do you remember getting any advice from people when it was your time coming in here, or anything that you heard or saw that was really helpful?
Everybody's watching, and you never know, so just give it your all whenever you can.
How about what you're most proud of when you look back at how you handled yourself on and off the field and how you were able to play some of the X's and O's? What are the things that you're like, man, I'm really proud of how I handled my rookie year?
Just soaked in all the knowledge I could, you know. I was using a lot of different ways, so I feel like the experience level that I have, you know, from just doing different things, you know, that, you know, can add to your value. So it's just, I'm excited to just, you know, get on that field and just fly around again, really.
You brought up how many positions you played and all the ways you were used in the game. Do you see that still being part of the game plan this year, or do you think you're going to get to focus a little bit more on one thing, and do you have a preference between those two?
I think it'll be more focused towards, one position, but, with the defense that we have, Bowles, he's really, he's a mastermind with that, so, we'll see.
And now that mastermind is the head coach. So what was that like for you to learn that was going to be his new role?
That was awesome, just seeing that, we had BA, he was a great coach, and then another great head coach in Bowles, so it's just exciting to see him get this title, and, can't wait to do great things with him.
What did you learn about him last year, and what do you love about the way he coaches?
Man, he really doesn't have to say much, but the things he says, is really meaningful. So, when Bowles speaks, people listen.
And I heard he's a trash talker. Have you been at the receiving end of this at all?
Yes, I have.
Looks like it got you.
I was a rookie, so I'm low key about it, but I definitely noticed that with him. I got some for him for real.
Yeah. Do you think now that you're not a rookie, you're gonna try to give any back, or are you still saying?
I might start some, but I don't want to overstep too much. You know what I'm saying? Do you trash talk on the field? And I feel like, first of all, before you answer, remember that we have mic'd up video of you. So just know that lying may not be an option here. There's a difference between trash talking and just talking on the field. Sometimes.
Oh, okay. There's nuance.
Yeah, I don't ever get personal with nobody. I'm not gonna go back and forth with them.
We're not talking about their mom. We're not none of that.
See, yeah. I don't know if there's a clip of that. Then I don't know who said that, but.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, it doesn't get personal. You just talk about what's happening on the field. You're just making observations.
It's just kind of like a observant, announcement.
And I'm sure part of why you would never talk about their mom is that you love yours so much.
Oh yeah, I love my mom.
Yeah. That's a line we don't cross.
I don't know what I'd do if someone says something about my mom. So.
Yeah, we'll know the moment that Joe just loses it on the field. That's going to be what costs.
Yeah.
So tell me about being raised by your mom, single mom. What are the biggest things that you feel like you learned from her, or the way she influenced you, both in terms of football and then even who you are off the field? Like the fact that as soon as you were drafted, you were saying you wanted to pay for your sister's medical school. So family obviously is super important. Who you are on and off the field is incredibly important to you. How much of that came from her?
Pretty much everything. She poured all she had into me and my sister. So just seeing that throughout our lives, it just really, really inspired me. And just I had no other choice but to do the best I could in basically whatever I do. So, if she didn't give up, why do I have a choice to give up? So I believe the things that she taught me, other than, the work ethic, but, she's just a really important piece in my life. Women in my life, my mom, my sister, grandma, aunt, all those people just poured into me. So I can't thank them enough. And
what do you think they would say about watching you this last year and seeing you realize this dream?
They love me, they're proud of me. Keep going, the job's not done, it's just the beginning.
Do you think they would say that you've changed in any way, or are you still the same Joe since before you get drafted?
I'm still the same Joe. I'm just, a little bigger, a little taller, what I'm saying, just growing up, but definitely the same Joe, still goofy, all that.
And so, yeah, you were actually a skinny kid, right? That you this whole, Joe as, NFL action figure is a more recent thing?
Yeah, I was always pretty lean, skinny my whole life, so.
And you were even in Taekwondo, is that right?
I did Taekwondo when I was 4 years old. I did it till age 10, I think. It taught me self-discipline, all that, just needed that instructor in my life to yell at me and, scream at me, tell me where I need to be at times, so.
Yeah, that prepares you for the NFL pretty well.
It do, and it teaches you how to move, so.
And
cool.
So Will Golston takes jiu-jitsu. He says similar things, that it was helping him with football. So you in Taekwondo, Will in jiu-jitsu. Which one of you think you win if you have to battle each other?
So Taekwondo is self-defense. I'm not trying to hurt nobody. I'm just blocking, But if I see a parry or a counter, might get a throat punch.
You might get one.
I ain't trying to fight Will.
I would watch this Clash of the Titans. Yeah.
I ain't trying to fight Will, man.
That's amazing.
Awesome stuff from Joe. Can't wait to see what he does this next year. Well, as we told you earlier, Scott Smith was over here with me at Raymond James Stadium, but thankfully our Advent Health Training Center just down the street. So we sent him over there to talk to General Manager Jason Licht. We were able to have that video for you right here.
Scott Smith here with General Manager Jason Licht as he is about to head into the draft room here at the Advent Health Training Center to get this 2022 draft started. Jason, You said last week that by the time you got to this point, 95% of the work would be done. But this is the 5% that's the fun part, right?
That's right. I'd say we're 99% now.
99?
Yeah. So there's always a few little finishing touches on that the day of the draft.
When you talk about all that work to get you to this point, that's a lot of people involved. You've described it as a collaborative effort, talking about scouts to people in your personnel department, coaches, video guys. When you talk about the Bucs' mini draft successes in recent years, I'm sure you'd like to share the credit with a lot of those people.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd like to give it all to them. So you can't do it without, the people that are in the scouting department. We have a lot of men and women that, do a lot all year long to lead us to this point. And then the coaching staff, as soon as the season's over and free agency, they dive into the draft. And it's just a constant process of putting that board together, rearranging it, having discussions, meetings, watching tape together. It's a long process, but which it makes it a lot of fun for today for a lot of people.
Another thing you said last week is that, and you say pretty much every year, all options are on the table. I assume that means pick a player at various positions, trade up, trade down, trade out. But I wanted to ask you specifically about trades and options. Does that include not only you being ready to take calls, but possibly even initiating some calls?
Oh, absolutely. That process has begun already this week. We call teams, we receive calls from teams saying, hey, there might be a situation where we'd be looking to move up, we'd be looking to move back, and then we do the same thing. Just so if that situation arises, you've already had a conversation, they know what you're looking for and sort of what you're looking for, and that you might be a potential trade partner.
Along the same lines, you said something last week that I've heard echoed around the league, even by other general managers, that this may not be a draft that's really heavy on players you would give first-round grades to, but you think there's a lot of depth to the point that you can get good players in middle rounds. If that's the way the majority of teams view this draft going in, does that make it more or less likely that teams are going to want to trade?
It depends. A lot of teams may want to trade out of their first-round pick and pick up a lot of middle-round picks. We'll just have to see how the board goes, and we have had a lot of luck here in recent history here with a player that we have a very strong first-round grade fall to us. So I have a pretty good feeling that that's going to happen tonight, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll ask you to elaborate on that because I was going to ask you that next. You picking 27th means 26 picks before you, so lots of possibilities of things that can happen. I'm sure you've gamed out many, many scenarios. In pretty much all of those scenarios, if forget trades, you're sitting at 27, you think that there's going to be at least one player there that can help the Bucs in 2020?
Absolutely. I have pretty strong belief and confidence that there will be.
And one final thing, there is one change in your draft room this year because the Buccaneers have a new head coach. Bruce Arians steps into a consulting role, and he's going into the Ring of Honor. Todd Bowles becomes the new head coach. That means he's your new, main collaborator in there. Are you looking forward to Todd and how that dynamic might be different?
Yeah, well, I've actually enjoyed it already in the past few weeks. Todd and I have gotten together several times, going over the board along with John Spytek and Mike Beal and the whole group. So we've already had that. So it's usually on draft day, you usually kind of sit back and wait for the pick to come because you've had all the discussions. So we've already had that. But I will enjoy being in the actual draft room with him this year.
Great. Thank you, Jason. The clock's about to start ticking, so you can head on in there, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Appreciate it, Scott.